Yeah, we're on. Okay, so yeah, we're live here on Facebook Live. Alex and I he just got done doing a tour for some people from Abu Dhabi, very fancy sounding, and then we were sitting here talking, and we had I don't know if it was a philosophical, but a bit of a deeper conversation. We're like, oh, what are we doing? Why don't we just start the thing?
Sure. And I still don't quite know how close I should sit to this microphone.
They say a fist away from there you go, from mouth to microphone. And obviously
mouth to table.
Into it is better, because that's how these specific microphones work.
So this has been a big week. Tuesday, we had the Columbus Partnership host their quarterly board meeting at the Foundry on behalf of Smart Columbus. And Smart Columbus, of course, our tenants here, our partners in some interesting stuff. I'm seeing Blake posting comments.
Yeah, he was waiting. We made him wait. Like, I think of it as like a concert, you know. They're like, we're going on at 9. It's like 9:30, and everybody just, you build the anticipation.
You don't want to be the first guest at a party. Fashionably late. But, had a big event on Tuesday, and then yesterday I was glad to go see Mayor Mike Coleman and Alex Fisher of the partnership mediate a discussion with Governor Kasich. And then just today we had the delegation from Abu Dhabi. So that's why I said, I told you I could use a drink after this. And you said, I don't know why that's a phrase. Why do people say, I need a drink?
Because I personally, I think about this a lot. I think it's just a movie thing that people say, oh, you look like you could use a drink. Or I really need a drink or whatever. In my mind, a drink always makes it worse. It's like if I'm stressed or something, I just do not want a drink.
Yeah, and that's why I asked you. I know that if I'm especially stressed, yes, there are cognitive exercises, meditative exercises, stress-relieving exercises that I'm sure all of us should practice. But empirically, a shot of something, a quick drink, calms me down. And that's why I asked, well, how do you feel about people who self-medicate or who medicate with prescribed anti-anxiety medication? Because I think there are effects you can quantify. Like, how do you quantify the euphoric effect of alcohol or the calming effect or, for some people, the chatty Cathy effect? There are definitely psychological impacts, I think, of the drug ethanol. And I don't know any of that science. I just know how it makes me feel. What I will say, something we mention on the tour all the time when we give people, and I didn't mention to the Abu Dhabi delegation because I wasn't sure they drink. Something that makes a startup neighborhood is a place like a makerspace, an art space like 400, a science museum like COSI, walkable bars and restaurants, and a live-work neighborhood. And those walkable bars and restaurants, so often we'll see people start a conversation here and then actually plan in the meeting. I've seen meetings where they say, meet Alex at 3:30 and then walk to land grant. This was someone who put it in our meeting. We did that, and then the conversation goes for another hour. And I don't know if it's because of the liberating effect of alcohol on someone's tongue, or mood or emotion or whatever, or it is just something to do, because in the same way that you mentioned yesterday, hey, like, you check your email too frequently, or check your text. I
didn't mean that as so accusatorily.
No, but it's true. A lot of people, something in their brain says, hey, it's time to do something, even though there's no real reason to do it. You're just in this habit.
Yeah, so, I think I don't think the two are necessarily related, but the email, checking email, Facebook, Twitter, checking for like the next thing that comes in, kind of the fear of missing out. But then there's also the other side of there's a weird reward system. It's the rat hitting the button and getting the treat kind of thing. I think those are the exact same thing. I don't know about how that would relate to alcohol. You think that there's a part of it there?
Well, in the same way that I think we can identify if I'm irrationally checking my email or and we talked a bit about this yesterday. I think slot machines, I think generally gambling, I think fishing, I think
driving. Is that what you think?
No, I was going to say dating, like going to the bar and hoping you get someone's number. Like anytime you're shot down 99 times out of 100, but that 100th time is enough to motivate you to keep doing it. I think is a kind of addictive phenomenon. So if you can identify that, I'm just checking my email because I'm feeding a habit rather than I need that information. Equally, of course, you should be aware, hey, am I going to have a drink because I'm having fun with my friends, I'm cutting loose, I'm being very present and intentional, or That's a problem.
Well, of course, that's not for me. I never really think of it like that, but I just think that I don't know. Like we've talked about it, like at the old shop on Corrugated. A lot of times I have weird hours too, so I'm working like right in people's prime social time, let's call it. And so a little less now because of my specific schedule. But like at the other shop, I'm working. We call it second shift, but we get there at like 7, and then we start working. And some people are hanging out and drinking, and they're like, "Oh, have a beer with me." I would be ruined for the rest of the night. So I can't. There's almost no positive productive effect of alcohol to me.
This is a good point about its impact on work. I'm watching these hawks circle outside too. It's pretty cool. I'm looking at it more as both the social lubricant and the de-stressing effect. And maybe today we should talk about de-stressing and generally just balancing the pressures of a life with or without entrepreneurship. Just being a human on this planet is stressful.
This is a good topic we stumbled our way into. But also it seems extremely relevant, well, to both of us, but you specifically. I don't know if it's this week, but just in general, you're coming off a wave of a lot of work.
And what we're learning too, of course, just like if you can sense anxiety out of a person, if you're an empathic person, you might be anxious too. So this is something I realized with our team members and our workshop and co-working members. There was a period where me being a hypomanic, ridiculous, crazy stressed person worked for my brand. And it worked for me because I like leaning out over my skis. I like being that person. And people can say, oh, that crazy guy, he's doing fun stuff. But then when you're part of a team, that can be very counterproductive energy because suddenly folks are absorbing that. And this is why it's especially relevant, I think, to be able to personally manage that kind of stress. And it's not that you're putting on a false front or denying a status, but dealing with it in a healthy way.
Well, I think it's sort of, it's funny, but it made me think of, like, if I was seriously injured, if you and I were in a car accident and you're pretty good after the accident, but I'm in trouble, you don't want to convey that to me almost. Like, you just want, no, things are fine, but you're looking at my bleeding stomach wound thinking, we've got to get help. And so I feel like you don't want to let me know. It's not going to help to let me know that you're worried. So I get that part.
No.
But I also think people react to that differently. So I was listening to a podcast recently, but it's this guy. You might be able to help me with him. It's this pretty recent CEO of Microsoft. I can't remember his name right now, but he's famous for being extremely manic, running around yelling, "Woo! I love this company!" and crazy stuff in these board meetings and stuff. And I feel like there's definitely a fine edge manic can go both ways. Manic can be public speaker, inspirational type guy. And then he also owns the Clippers. Is the guy?
Is it Steve Ballmer?
That sounds right.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, Zach had the answer there. He's our trivia genius.
We crowdsource production of this podcast.
Nice. I should have just asked them. You wouldn't have to look it up. But anyway, I thought that the same thing could go for both ways for those guys. I mean, I think that sometimes if my CEO is running around screaming and stuff, I think, this guy's mentally unstable, or he's a little, or is he in panic mode?
Yeah.
Are we saying things are good, but things are terrible, and that's why he feels like my last ditch effort is to just throw a bunch of energy into everything I say and hope it works?
I think Elon Musk is at that critical point for him now. If you've seen some of the reports in the news that there was a period where he's, telling everyone work 80 hours, 100 hours. There was a great line. One of his employees said, "Hey, look, we haven't seen our families in ages." He said, "You'll have plenty of time to see your families when we go bankrupt." And it's that kind of, very aggressive, motivating energy. But now people are calling his workspaces unhealthy work environments, etc.
Yeah. Well, let's take it back to that because you and I, what did I say? It's funny that guy's name is Steve Ballmer. And then we're talking about the Ballmer Peak too.
Yeah.
I'm gonna skip that one. you and I talked about this. What was the line I said one time where someone walked in and they said, "What are these guys doing?" And I say, "We were researching new forms of the word busy, because we were just so busy all the time." I can't remember. It was some version of that, and you thought it was a clever way to put it. But we used to, especially at the old shop, I mean, we used to work 100 hours a week, and kept it up for a long time. So I remember someone asked us, this is when Levi and I had our day jobs, and someone at COSI, how do you guys go and work 8 more hours at another job every day? And our answer was just don't stop. Like if you keep going, but if you like rest and reflect on it, then you're thinking this is crazy and it's unsustainable. And I do think it's unsustainable, but obviously there are people who have done it for a crazy amount longer than you thought, 10 years, 20 years. That people have worked 80-hour weeks. So I mean, obviously there's a real limit.
I mean, honestly, I think I'm going on 9 years there, and there are some like a light week is 60 hours, and that's because it's also mostly Saturday and Sunday. But the other answer is find your passion and do it healthfully. But I do like that the word business, I'm guessing, is just busyness.
Oh, sure.
Which I think is pretty funny.
But I think so. There are interesting things about working too long or too hard. The thing I used to call the 10 o'clock brain, where if you get up at a normal time, 8, 9 in the morning, go to work, about 10 o'clock at night, you'll lose your ability to do math. You're just tired. It's the same. I mean, no matter how much caffeine you drink, no matter how much you've managed your energy as far as food and such throughout the day, you just lose your ability to do math, simple things like that, where you just make mistakes. And there's one of my favorite books is called Rework, and it's written by the 37 Signals. I want to call it 36, but I think it's 37 Signals. They're software guys. And I'm sure one of our trivia geniuses will fix it. But they had a chapter in there was don't be a hero. And they're saying things like that where staying up all night and trying to work, you're not doing productive work, and you become a bull, was the metaphor that they used, where you're just charging ahead, smashing through things. And in fact, if you were to take a step back, and I think this happens a lot, specifically I think this a lot when I'm working on cars or motorcycles, when I'm working on a problem like that by myself, sometimes I get frustrated trying the same thing over and over again. If I just go and take a break, get a drink of water, get something, a snack to eat or something, and think about it without looking at it, you sometimes come back with a better approach.
And it's funny, I've wholly agree, and I love Zach is really on top of all of our questions here, faster than you can Google it, so I know he knows it.
He's our producer.
Yeah, I think so. Did you see that comment by John saying stuck on, watching the feed? Oh, okay, you've been on that. So, years ago, I was writing software for a class. It was a project, undergraduate in college, and I was being a hero. I was being stupid, and I was sitting in the same chair maybe 12 hours, 14 hours, and getting eye strain, literally not getting up to go to the bathroom even though my bladder was ready to explode. And I had eye strain and a headache from working, and finally I get up, and I still remember the sensation. I was walking to the restroom, and in my mind's eye, I thought, it's going to feel so good. And I could see myself bending over head forward into the urinal and peeing out of the center of my forehead, because my body and my brain just combined the pressure of my bladder and my stress and my eye ache and my headache, and I stopped and paused mid-hallway and probably chuckled and laughed to myself, like, this is absurd. Went there, but sure enough, when I came back, the bug that I was trying to fix got in a heartbeat.
Yes.
Get up and
I especially
shake it
think
off.
that problem, I said automotive stuff, but I think that when it comes to software stuff, you could just get stuck slogging through the code, and when it comes to that kind of stuff, it's like take a step away, think about it, almost like the troubleshooting method of explain it to someone else. Here's what I'm trying to do. They got the thing over here. I need to go through this thing, and then I have to come out and have this information. And just explaining it to someone is like, now I know how to do it. So that's definitely you need to take a step back, fresh eyes.
You know what I'd like to do? Because I think both of us know that you're supposed to pause and take a break. There are still times where I try to push and struggle through. I don't want to reinvent the wheel, and I'm not a fan of duplication. and I know 37 Signals and Rework has done a great job of saying, hey, these are rules to live by.
Yeah.
What would be an equivalent body of work that the Idea Foundry community can create? Just a list of 5 or 10 rules that have helped all of us. And again, don't rework. But and maybe it's specific to the maker culture. So there's,
that's interesting. I like what you're saying here. So Rework is set up so that it's almost like each chapter, there's a lot of mini chapters, and each page almost is a chapter. So one chapter is like, basically one page of text as you would see it in Google Docs or something like that, or an actual 8.5 by 11 if anyone's ever even seen a real piece of paper anytime soon, anytime recently. But that would be interesting. So I think we should do that. We should send it out to our entrepreneurs or whatever, and all our workshop people downstairs, and say, maybe it's just one though. Do you think it's one like tip, story, write a chapter basically?
So you mean crowdsource it for?
That's
for
what I'm saying.
people?
That's what I'm saying.
That's really interesting. And what I just posted is a PDF of Janitor or Secretary of State Colin Powell's I think 15, 18 lessons in leadership. Mm-hmm. These things are epic. These I draw on weekly. Really cool stuff. Now, these are broad, have to do with leadership in general, but I'd love something more specific to what it is we're doing here. And we can reference other folks. This is what I tried to do with a few of the first business member meetups, is to start growing bibliography or a list of reading materials that people have found valuable, that you found valuable, that Zach or Blake find valuable, and categorize it.
Do you? So you mean rather than rewrite it, you just want to reference a couple of things from Rework?
Well,
or books like that?
In an effort to not reinvent the wheel and not duplicate stuff. Like when I was doing my dissertation 100 years ago, I was getting frustrated that every new idea I was coming up with had already been thought of by a German mathematician who had been dead for 300 years. Like, if you just read a lot, talk to a lot of people, you learn. People are smart. People have recorded that information. People with more experience than you. So what is the niche value we can provide? And do we do our due diligence to know that, hey, and sure, we can say maybe, there will be a cutoff point where it takes more effort to read all of human knowledge to find out if what you were about to say has already been said. But certainly, maybe this is the utility of a community like this that can interact digitally, is we'll say, hey, these have been values to me. And people say, yeah. Like, what was a book? The War of Art.
Sure.
There's a fellow, he's a co-working member here, and he started a, Lucas Latour, he started a wake up at 5 a.m. club on Facebook. About 15, 20 people. He would call them at 5 a.m. and talked about the phenomenon of, he called it reluctance, I think.
I thought it was resistance.
Well, it is resistance in War of Art, because he had either cryptomnesically read it, forgot about it, and then thought he reinvented it, or he came up with a synonymous phenomenon.
Okay.
We need to combine that synonomen.
Phenomenon.
So I think, and people who are members of the Facebook business group do have access to that halted effort. This is why I think we need someone whose job is to kind of manage our digital community and aggregate information and content, not just for the use of us, but now maybe to broadcast in print or in a podcast, and rather than extemporaneous like this or a screencast. I think it's valuable because I still forget the lessons that I have learned and told myself. Like, I've wanted to have a well-produced, like a 4-foot by 8-foot banner that I put on my ceiling right over my bed with 10 things. Alex, don't forget this.
Yeah.
Number one, get out of bed. And then this and that. So, and the last one, go to bed, sleep. I think that'd be fun. What the hell is Zach posting here?
It's the phenomenon. My mom is big on Post-it notes everywhere that'll say like, remember to eat and stuff like that. Yeah. Like, just like little reminders. But I personally, I feel like it's the same with like ad blindness on the internet, where there's always an ad right in this spot, so I don't even see anything there anymore. And I feel like it would be what it would be. It's if I put a sign up and had to see it every day, it would be the one thing I would never know.
So we're going to get real weird right here.
Let's do it.
So a week ago, I was in Quebec. A week or 2 weeks ago? Anyway, I had some time to read. Like you mentioned, been stressed, and it's kind of nice sometimes when you're forced to just sit in a chair for 4 hours, and instead of playing Hex Defense game on my app on my phone, bought some textbooks for things that I didn't learn very well in college, some math, some physics, and I had a friend in undergrad who would go to, he was part of the Rensselaer, I went to RPI, Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. He was part of the Rensselaer Christian Association. And every Friday night, he derived great value by getting together with his friends and doing Bible study. So they'd quiz each other and ask about this, where is that? And I was envious of someone who derived such, purpose and understanding and goals and comfort in knowing what to do. For me, reading a physics book, I read Brief History of Time over the weekend. That to me, where we came from, where we're going, the majesty of the universe. That to me is my scripture. And maybe if we say, hey, look, this is weird. I want to study like the monks did, a particular way of living, and this requires understanding this is how I want to live my life. These are my 10 goals. This is how to do it. I recognize this is challenging. It's not just carving out time in the week. This is effort. It's like working out in your behavior.
Like discipline.
Yeah. And in order to do that, we have to remind ourselves we have to study because decision exhaustion, post-it blindness, you will forget this stuff. So this is maybe the growing body of knowledge that are encapsulated in 10 or 15 tenets that are what the few hundred or few thousand people in our community who want to learn new things, build things, maybe become an independent entrepreneur. And we've realized, hey, look, after 10 years of doing this, there are commonalities amongst the personalities, amongst the behavior. Let's write them down and consider it our kind of sacred texts.
Yeah, like you're designing a what do they call them then? A monastery where monks go, and it would be, and that's like how we live.
That's the reason I use that phrase. I was in the library at RPI, pardon me, and I was listening to a conversation between two guys, and RPI was a lot like a monastery. 95% men to women ratio, 97 when I left. But they said one of them had found a text from a monk in the Middle Ages, and it said, get up at 4:30 with the dawn, do your prayers, work in the garden for an hour, study Latin for an hour, study Greek for an hour, brew beer for an hour, do this and that. And he said, and math and astronomy and botany. He said, it's great, but these guys, they didn't get a phone call from their girlfriend saying, let's go rollerblade for the afternoon. Like, it was interesting that he aspired towards a life of study and pursuit of his goals, but was distracted by just life. And nothing wrong with that. In fact, more of us should live life. I should listen to my own advice. Yeah. But if we're trying to have our cake and eat it too, and say, if you can evaluate the efficiency of how people spend their time running a business, whether it's their day job or this, are we 25% efficient? Are we 50% efficient? Are we 75% efficient? Are there 5 or 10 tricks? And I don't want to sound like a clickbait listicle, but actual things that accomplished folks have said, hey, this helped save an hour a day or 10 hours a week
sort
by
of
doing
like
this.
Our tools for Titans.
Yeah. Or to sift through tools for Titans and find out what worked for us.
Is that more what you mean? Like, don't recreate any of this content. Just find the pieces of content that you like that are already out there. Is that what you mean?
Well,
because I'm envisioning sort of a curated. I actually, when you were originally talking about this, and it goes against what you were saying about not reinventing the wheel. But I think it would be interesting if my grandpa was in World War II, and he went to Harvard afterwards on the GI Bill, and There's a book that I have at home, and it's all the people who did that, who were in World War II, and then like the next couple years of classes that went straight to Harvard. And it writes about their experience or whatever. And so some people, they just sent people letters or whatever and said, please write about your experience for this book we're making or whatever. And obviously not everyone did it. There are some famous people. I know that one of his classmates was Jack Lemmon from Grumpy Old Men, an actor. And a couple other people that we might know. But anyway, he hated it. He hated World War II. And it was obviously it's about World War II. So, but I guess you could talk about Harvard too. But anyway, so some people's was multiple pages, some people was just a paragraph, and his says cold, wet, and miserable or something, and then it was like maybe 2 more sentences about how much, and then that was it. Like he never wanted to talk about it. But I do think it would be interesting if sort of we gave everybody a chapter or something. That's what I was thinking of in the Idea Foundry. If everyone got a chapter, we made a book of the Idea Foundry pro tips or whatever.
Maybe now, so you and I have had a lot of conversations about what is the purpose of this podcast, what is the purpose of podcasting at the Idea Foundry. Maybe we combine that with a meet your maker, meet your member, and interview them and distill that into text. Because some people do like to write, some people are great extemporaneous speakers, some people might need someone to tease information out or be a two-way kind of communication. So maybe a broader part of the idea of a website that you're looking to put together that collects 5 or 10 or 20 people's podcasts, maybe in there is a link to an actual blog or an actual, hey, this was what I found valuable, or living documents. I really like living documents.
Sure.
So here's my current Google Drive doc that is the 10 things that I find super useful, and this is why also, where my data-driven nature would like to say, by eating twice a day instead of 3 times a day. Am I saving not just 30 minutes, but am I saving the time to prepare it? Does it not interrupt my workflow because I can? There's no transitional shift between tasks.
But I would think so. A bit of this is like what you were saying earlier. It makes me think of like just intentional design when it comes to your own life, or like an RPG, like a role-playing game.
Yeah.
When you think like, well, if I was designing my character, I would have, let's say it's everything's out of 10. I would have 7 or 8 strength. And then my intelligence would be 9, and things like that. So then we would think, okay, well, what would this person do? I mean, some of it's the boring day-to-day stuff, but obviously I'm the one really living those 24 hours. Mm-hmm. So, about even if it comes down to like if you just filled out the schedule of, the ideal person, or what would the world's most interesting man, what would he do today? And he would get up at 9 and eat this and do this and look at this for new information and stuff. So I feel like it's an interesting way of just living your life intentionally rather than just letting it happen. I know I have a meeting at 2, so I don't have to do anything till then, and I'll just futz around on the internet until I get
exactly.
there.
I love that. And again, back to Michael Cow's lifestyle design lecture he gave maybe 2 years ago on what is it you want to do every week. And then, like you said, don't wait for serendipity to happen to give you 10 hours free to do it. It's not going to happen. So design it in. And that's when it occurred to me. I think for me personally, there's 2 things. Decision and design. So decide, who do I want to be? Mm-hmm. What do I want to do? What's important to me? And then an intentional design component to say, okay, how do we make that happen? And maybe that involves, okay, go to college for 4 years. Or spend 10 years. There was a great meme. I think entrepreneurs are people who will do what no one else will do for a few years so they can live like no one else can for the rest of their life. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Well, how do you, while you were saying that, I had something. Now you made me lose it, but I don't remember what it was. But what do you think about, when you're talking about going to college, you have a degree. You don't regret that time. Well, you have a couple, but what you don't regret that time, right? That was part of building your character.
Yeah, this is always a really hard question. It's almost read A Brief History of Time recently. Uncertainty, like, would I be the person now? Even if I hated a period of that, I like who I am now. Do I know that I'd still be this person if I didn't do that? So a lot of it is just setting regret aside. But
Yeah, or just the fact that I think that some of that is general happiness. Like, if you're happy now, then you really shouldn't have any regrets in the past, because all of those decisions or things that happened led you to where you are right now. So why would you want things to be differently?
Sure,
I guess
sure.
I guess things could be better, but they could always, something that seems better at the time could have messed things up. You know, and you never know. There are interesting things, obviously. Like my dad always points out. I think this is from. I don't think this is Freakonomics, but I think this is the Malcolm Gladwell, David and Goliath, the book where he talks about. I think they talk about how 50% of like high performing CEOs have some form of dyslexia, where having what seems like a disadvantage actually leads out to being an advantage. So if those people would have said, well, dyslexia is bad, let's get rid of it, then maybe they wouldn't have. A lot of them pointed to basically having to design a new way of learning for themselves. Okay, I can't keep up with the rest of the class here because I can't read what's on the board or whatever, so I'm going to have to figure out another way. I'm going to have to pay better attention when the teacher's talking or whatever it is. And then that led to some skill that they then used to great success later.
Richard Branson, very dyslexic, and he said it led to an amazing memory because he had to memorize everything. And who... there's one of the most watched TED Talks is, I think, Sir Kenneth Robinson, is about how kids are born creative and we burn it out of them in school.
Sure.
And it was about a girl who would have been diagnosed with ADD today, but the school advisor said, look, she doesn't have ADD. There's nothing wrong with her. She's just a dancer. And she became one of the most, she owns the dance choreography school in London. It comes down to, I think, to avoid those regrets, like, should I have gone to college? I don't use my degree daily.
Sure.
Now I'm glad that there might be an opportunity for kids 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 years old, or adults, to take a camp, and I'd still like to design this camp, where you come here or some similar place, Monday through Friday, you learn 20 skills. Solder a circuit, program an Arduino sketch, climb a rock wall, speak a few words in another language, weld something, paint something. And if you're young enough, when you're at that point where you're kind of exploring who you are, what you want to do, 12, 13, 14, some of us, myself included, a lot later, then you see, do I have any passion or aptitude at all? Then I think we can have more focused study on where you devote the next 5 or 10 years of your life, and people are generally happier.
Sort of what you think of if you don't know what a guidance counselor is in school. That's sort of like what you think they would do. Is they'd be the geniuses that are picking out, this person's a dancer, or this person has a aptitude for numbers or something like that. I know Joe Rogan always talks about, he said one of his teachers told him he would never amount to anything, and then he was terrible at school or whatever. And he's like, yeah, I was terrible at school, but that taught me to be funny, because I'm just making fun of school and stuff. So eventually, he turns it into a different thing. But it's like
Gary Vaynerchuk too.
Yeah, you need someone who recognizes those things. A thing I think I talked to you about where when you talk about someone being diagnosed with ADD, in my mind, I have this resistance to things like that, where I know people who they get a diagnosis, whether it's mental ADD thing or a physical thing. You have some condition with your foot or your knee, and they're just always referring back to it. I have this impediment. I've identified a thing I can't do because I have a problem with my hips, or I have scoliosis or something. And scoliosis, some of them are obviously pretty major.
Sure.
If you're paraplegic, I'm not saying you should go do things, but that you can't do. But if you take 1 second to Google some of these people that are adaptive athletes, is what they call them in CrossFit, where people are climbing ropes with who were born with no legs, or they had them from some accident or something, and people are doing some amazing things, and they're never sitting there thinking, well, I have to stay on this couch. I have to not try because I'm diagnosed with something. And I think ADD is one of those too, where it's like, I have ADD. I can't do that. Well, people have been succeeding before ADD even existed. People have been overcoming this impediment.
And you could say maybe because of, too.
Sure, that's exactly
Robin
my
Williams. So, actually there's a paraplegic Franklinton woman who's coming for a tour in a couple of weeks. She's been to the shop a number of times, and she's asked to have a meeting about things she'd like to do here. And I'm really excited to have that meeting. There was something else you mentioned about the impediments. Oh, yeah. So and as you said rightly, that certain people are very lucky, certain people are very unlucky. And I was talking to my my auto mechanic, who grew up in the same village my dad did in Lebanon, Haydar. And we were talking, this is a couple of years back, and like, yeah, so how you doing? And he's doing well. He asked me how I'm doing. Well, he said, can't complain. And my catchphrase, it doesn't do any good anyway. Mm-hmm. And then we talked about how you can, it sounds flippant, will yourself happy. Sure. It is a muscle you can exercise. And I said, but like, life's good. It's easy for me to be happy now. I walked that comment back when I said, look, my family's happy and healthy. I'm happy and healthy. The business is going okay. So why shouldn't I be happy? Like, it's easy. It's not like I have, some terminal illness. And he yelled at me. He said, no. That's when it's most important to be able to make yourself happy. Sure. If you have something that's dragging you down, and this is a guy who lived through a couple wars and has seen some terrible stuff, so he knows what he's talking about. When you're at your darkest, that is when you need that talent to, I don't even know if it's contextualized, because even in context, life is terrible.
This one's for Zach, because he was talking about not listening to podcasts and just doing it vicariously through me. But a podcast I was listening to recently with Sam Harris and a Marine. Was he a Marine? Anyway, he was an elite forces guy. I think it was Marines and or Navy SEALs and the elite forces of the Marines. And he was saying that what they do in extreme circumstances like war and stuff is they said, hey, we're going. They'll get a briefing from their superior officer, whatever. They say, we're going into this thing. There's lots of gunfire. There's a lot of guys shooting at them and stuff, and we're going to go support them and everything. And he said what they always do is they say, good. Whenever they think, oh, man, things are getting pretty hairy, you say good like, great, like I just got a piece of cake. Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah. And so they just have, and he said there's something about mentally having that attitude of, people are going to be trying to kill me? Good.
That's amazing, and that's one of the kinds of life tips that I'm curious about. Even yesterday, I had a meeting with Casey and Matt, and we were talking about, so we have these challenges, these issues, and sometimes the way you communicate it to people immediately indicates whether or not it's a positive or negative, and I'm going to sound like a hippie, energy. Sure. So if like, man, we have this issue. We've got to deal with it. And the whole room, again, if you're nice, empathic people, you're going to absorb that, and you're already off on the wrong foot. Versus, hey, we have this exciting challenge. And I remember at COSI, we would get emails from COSI, and when we were doing the Maker Fair together, and some of the language embedded in their bureaucratic ease was very. It looked like HR. Scripted. We appreciate you bringing this issue to our attention. We look forward to working together. At the time, Casey and I were kind of chuckling at it, saying like, "This, what a bureaucratic, like a little bit of mumbo jumbo." But I get that now. I really think it's not nearly as dangerous as charging into battle and saying, "Well, good, great." But those kinds of skills, and what I'm curious about is for people who live a devout life, be good to your neighbor. Do this like. What would an organization, a community, a world be like with where people have these 5 or 10 things at present mind all the time, which is, hey, look, I understand when I'm talking to this person, yes, I have to communicate an idea, but even the way I'm doing it may influence their mood right away.
But you know that you and I have talked about a lot about this, but that I call that impression management. And I think that's one. He's not going to be listening to this because he's out of town, maybe in the mountains, I think. But this is Levi. Levi taught me this, that at COSI, when we would be in meetings, he is 100% right what he's saying, but he's loud anyway, so his default is yell. And he's yelling it, and that puts people off, but also he's a bit, he's passionate about how things are made, which makes him a great maker. And that's what he's done professionally since I've known him for at least 10 years. And, but when it comes to people, I remember one of the biggest discussions he ever had was over these Allen head socket screws and how what they were using was wrong, and he had the right screws or whatever. And I remember he had brought it up a couple of times, so that made him even more frustrated that no one was listening to it. And I remember, and there was a meeting, and I think at some point they actually went the other way, sort of despite him. He's just yelling.
Despite or to spite?
Well, despite, but yeah, in spite of him, maybe too spite, but that I didn't really mean it that
Sure.
strong. But now we're getting into our what is that called? Word fetishism. Yes. But no, not despite, in spite of him, to spite him. So anyway, yeah, there is a bit of that where, and I saw it downstairs with him and Matt Hatcher, where he was talking about, Levi was talking to him about some blade on some saw or whatever. He just came in so strong, and I'm like, man. Yeah. We're both trying to do the same thing, which is make the thing better. I had to play moderator there for a moment, but it's like that's impression management. Is that if you are conveying this like aggressive attack, people instantly go into defense. Especially certain personalities will do that anyway. I deal with him better because that's not my. I don't just back off instantly because I know where he's coming from. But that's I think that's something that people. I think, honestly, this comes from being on video. I can see myself right now. I watch these later, podcasts, you listen to yourself talk. There is a lot of things that you can learn instantly. I think that if we just put anyone, if the two of us were talking to any one person in our group or whatever who's not used to being on camera or talking or seeing themselves from this angle kind of thing, you would learn a lot. A lot of information goes in your brain in that first minute about what impression. I've been trying to consciously do it, but I tend to like slouch, like round my back over. That's one of the things that I subconsciously do, and I'm trying to actually bring it to the forefront and work on it. But there were a lot of those impression management things that I think people just have no idea about themselves because they're never reflecting.
Yeah. And we've talked a little bit about, and I don't know if we've mentioned on the podcast, but about how friends tell you what you want to hear,
sure.
Good friends tell you what you don't want to hear, and that maybe we could have, I don't want to start another Facebook members club or an agreement amongst a few folks who say, hey, look, I get you want me to succeed. I want you to succeed too. You look better with that shirt tucked in.
Sure.
Or it's the spinach in your teeth, but at a professional level. Mm-hmm. Like I know you're wearing your work boots because you work in but you really just look out of place when you're hanging out with all the students.
All these things are you about yourself right now.
The other thing, too, I'm thinking, it's funny once everyone has many people have mirror face or selfie face. You're looking in the mirror.
Zach called it phone neck. Is that what you mean? Oh, you mean the opposite of that.
So there are times where I was looking in the mirror, and a friend of mine actually called me out and said, oh, mirror face. And I'm like, I just arrange my features in a way that I think look a little more attractive. Yeah. There are times if I'm taking a photo of something and my camera is still on selfie mode, and I'm looking at myself, I see my dad. I totally see my father. Now that's just our family resemblance.
Yeah.
The point is, this is how other people see me when I don't think I'm being watched.
That's kind of what I mean, is that when you turn on your phone and you don't realize the camera is faced towards you or whatever, that's the face that like you weren't ready.
That's what I mean, and it is shocking.
Now, Zach said that's phone neck. It's sort of the angle where you're like straight up from it.
I see. Yeah.
But I do think what you're saying. That's what I'm saying. If I saw myself in a candid photo or someone was going through here recording and I'm just in the background working and I got mouth open and I just like, oh, I look like that?
And
that's impression management.
Where I struggle a little bit is because I'm a merit over flash kind of person. Mm-hmm. And so I'd think, don't put on airs. Don't be fraudulent. Don't be false. Don't be fake. However, if getting what you want done involves convincing people to join your mission or do what you need, then roll all that. Not everyone is going to be able to evaluate the sum total of your life's merit. They're not going to know your GPA. They're not going to know every time you succeeded. They're evaluating you on a very few moments of experience, and that is including the energy you bring. Again, I sound like such a weird hippie.
No.
So I think this is important. I'm looking at this guy who's posting a lot. I'll call out Blake as an excellent person who looks like a contractor, acts like a contractor, does those things. People get it. He's super proactive, and he's got a successful business as a result. In addition to talent and hard work and opportunity,
passion.
Maybe that's what his needle is.
You know what that's what he would say. You know what I thought I was a professional.
Zach is hysterical.
It is funny that you said that about Blake because Zach and I were saying that about when you go to Killer Queen, and Blake is just this we'll say bombastic, to quote Evgeny, but when he is just loud and crazy about this game, and then Zach will say or told his wife, that guy's has this construction company. She's like, what?
That's
so
really funny.
It is funny that on the other side when he's in that world, and people are like, what does he do for a living?
And there are people who have seen me climbing the rafters at rehab at the bar. But
right.
Not that that's much better.
No,
but I tell you one thing, seeing Zach and Blake doing all these things. We have 4 microphones. We can mix 4 audio signals here, right?
Yes, absolutely. That's the intention.
Since they seem to be, Zach and Blake, you guys seem to be the most regular contributors to this board. How about next Friday? And I don't mean to spring this on you, Dylan.
No.
We have some kind of agenda in advance, so it's not purely extemporaneous. Zach is saying no. I think, or maybe Zach, you can produce us. But I think
sit in the corner.
I'd like to broaden the conversation sometime.
Well, I don't know. Were you trying to wrap things up? Is that what you were saying? That
a little bit, but happy to chat for another few minutes.
No, I was.
I need a drink. You know that.
I was going to bring up a new topic, so I'm not going to do it.
Now I'm curious. What's your new topic?
Well, it was back originally because I was you were talking about the monks and okay, so this guy it's easy enough for him to live this life when he doesn't have his girlfriend texting him or whatever. But how do you deal with distractions like emails and texts and meetings and stuff like that? Because that was something that I had a total life reset on when I went to Florida. It's like I don't know anyone there. I'm not connected to this network anymore. I don't have any more obligations in that regard. So no one's texting me or calling me or emailing me on a regular basis that's constantly providing a distraction throughout the day. And I thought it was great for my mental health and for all that. So how do you of all people handle that? Because I know you have more than most.
There are legit tools, skills that I would like to get better at. And it's funny, too, that while you were talking about how much better your life was without distractions, I'm checking my phone, I'm fidgeting with these business cards. But one is definitely, I am a responsive people pleaser, so if an email comes in, it must be dealt with. And there was a great article, 5 things you should do every day for 50 minutes each day to improve your productivity by 25%. And it's one of them was just in the morning, stretch for 50 minutes.
Stretch. So you're saying these 5 things take 50 minutes each?
Yes, and let me see if I can remember it completely. But one was stretch, and that's like just starting instead of wake up, get out the door, and just like take a second and be a human. Get an extra 50 minutes of sleep each night. So make sure you're doing that. Set aside exactly 50 minutes or an hour for just doing what you need to do before you check email, before you get in there. And forgive me, I'll have to find the other 2. One real problem of just modern communication, and I know a lot of people have said this, Gmail. I might get an email. I need to respond to it. It's important. If I checked it on my phone, the Gmail app on my phone doesn't allow me to mark it as unread again. So it's no longer still flagged as a bold-faced unread email in my inbox. So I will forward it to myself. And this is not a great
Is that
solution.
right? You really can't mark it unread?
Not with the Gmail app that I have on my Android phone.
You know what I do is I star them.
See, it's coming up with some way where either say, look, I will not check email on my phone.
Yeah.
There is a period, and this was a Tim Ferriss thing too, where he said, look,
sure.
So if I'm really disciplined, and I have not been for a while, check it around 11 to 12. And then 4 to 5. And I've read this before, too. This way, if someone sent you an email the night before, then you can get to it by noon. If they sent you something in the afternoon, you're still responding by 6 p.m., say, and you look like a star, but you've compartmentalized your life in such a way that you're actually getting work done in the 2 or 3 hours in between those chunks, or meetings, or things like that.
Yeah, that's Tim Ferriss specifically, and then the great productivity genius C.G.P. Gray does the similar thing where he blocks off half the day he doesn't work in an office with people. I don't know if Tim Ferriss does these days anymore either, but that was sort of the office strategy, is that, only answer email for an hour, two times a day, and then the rest of the time you're basically letting them build up.
And I'm posting the
I can't recommend enough the stretching thing that you're talking about. I mean, I've been doing yoga for almost 3 years now, and it's one of those things where you're like, working out in general is like this, but yoga, which I don't really consider working out, is more of a body maintenance thing. But when it's like the thing you should be doing it. You should be doing it. I know I should be doing it today. And then every time afterwards, you feel so much better.
Sure.
And you're just, man, I should just do this. So I setting aside the time, especially at the beginning of the day, is a perfect time for that, because you always feel energetic afterwards. Suddenly, my whole body works better, and you get stiff from sleeping. So you know your joints and your legs and your arms and everything is stiff. Your back sometimes. So it's good to move first thing, get the blood flowing.
Yeah, I found that thing and I posted it on the Facebook. 50 minutes of sleep, 3 50-minute blocks of time, breaks, and a renewal. And these numbers can vary, but point is, be intentional about your behavior. It's still very hard for me. It's and letting go of stress of unreplied to emails. If it's real important, they'll get a hold of you. There has only been maybe one time where obsessively checking emails, there was a media opportunity where, like, say, morning shows guest canceled, and they said, hey, can we be there at 7:45 in the morning? And I checked it at 6:45, and yes, but I tell you, I can't point to any value we got from having that group come.
And that was once of all the days. Man, I had some while you were saying that, but I just think that in general, you don't want to do that. You don't want to have the addictive, constantly checking the email kind of thing.
And you trick yourself into thinking you're productive. But even, again, Christopher Celeste, our guru and investor partner, my engine was burning hot. I was starting to burn out, thought I had to work a lot more. And he said, look, I can't explain it. When you're in crisis mode, calm down. Just do one thing. And he said, I don't know what magic sauce happens for that. Do fewer things better than more things. And again, we sound like a tear-off one-a-day calendar tips and tricks. These are the things where I would like to query the 50 happiest, most successful people I know. And I don't equate success with happy. I should say, maybe that's what we should do. 50 happiest people we know.
This is you're going down a dark path, my friend, because there's a book called 5 that the guys from Spark Space here in town that they're big proponents of handing out. So it's like how to plan out the next 5 years of your life.
Yeah.
One of the first pages is identify the 5 happiest people you know. Good luck. Good luck. It's a whole workbook, right? And I'm telling you, I went down a rabbit hole of depression after reading that page, because I started to think about, okay, so this person. And I thought, well, you know what? Now the more that I think about it, they're not happy. And then you go, okay, what about this person? I can't name 5 happy.
Interesting.
5 people who are truly happy, because then you're like sort of emulating what they do. Okay, what is the commonality among all of them? Do they own their own business? Are they married? Whatever it is. And I'm telling you, it sounds all upside, all positive, but it can be a rough exercise to do that. The one thing I was going to ask you was, one of my aspirations in life that I always sort of joke about would be, I would like to be able to get to the level of, when we're talking about emails and distractions and stuff like that, of someone like, the old example was Bill Gates, but like Elon Musk. For example, I do not think, and I think that 95% of people, except for delusional people, don't feel that they can get a hold of Elon Musk right now. I do think most people think I could get a hold of Alex Bandar if I wanted to, or Dylan, of course. So if they, I want to get to the point where people respect my time inherently enough that they would not email me, or like maybe there's one round of you know how Tim Ferriss has a kickback email or whatever that's in his book. One round of it will get rid of a certain percentage of people where they just assume they couldn't do it. Obviously, the extremely bold people, that's also a Tim Ferriss thing too. Remember where he had that project at Princeton where get a hold of somebody famous, and no one did it because they just assumed they couldn't. And then the next round, everybody got answers back or whatever. But how do you feel about getting to that point? Like, I also assume there are gatekeepers there where I couldn't email Elon Musk because someone's answering his emails that is not him, kind of thing.
Well, with his particular example, do you know that Twitter can get a hold of him in a day?
Right, I have heard.
So
he said he's responded.
Yeah, responded and fixed an issue with Tesla within 6 days. I think what makes a person happy, and this is an ageless and probably answerless question, but just figure it out on your own, do blah, 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 blah. So something that I do take pride in is being accessible and making friends. You did a funny double take at the tablet.
I was double checking that it was still on, and then I saw a bunch of things come in real quick, so I have to check what they are.
Shouldn't read these comments while talking.
I know, it's tough.
So we were talking about accessibility and taking pride in being. Oh, here we go too. I personally like meeting people, and so when I first came to Columbus, I started the social club, and it kind of didn't go anywhere. But now the Idea Foundry is my social club. So unless I can see that really carving out 80% of emails that come in will greatly benefit my capacity to either run this business or pursue other passions. I'm at a point now where the business was so slow for so long, it's exciting to see requests coming in. I'm actually eager to open my email. There was a period I wasn't, and just to see, hey, what's the new opportunity? But it took, 9 years of long slog, and I think Blake put the word slog in earlier for some reason. So I wonder if one of the answers is bizarre AI that reads your email and anticipates whether this is important or not, almost a digital gatekeeper. And Wolfram, the guy who started Wolfram Alpha, which is it's not a search engine, it's an answer engine, a knowledge database. He has been letting his AI software read his email for 10, 15 years. And now he's reasonably confident that the algorithm can know if an email comes in, said, hey, Wolfram, 99% sure I can answer this in your voice with the correct information without you having to do this. And so this is, yes, it's a time saver. As long as there's a flag saying, hey, this was generated by my AI, this might be an interesting way to give you more time and yet still affect your passion, still make connections. Because I think most of life is just getting these connections.
Yeah.
Sure, there's solo work, there's solo ideation, innovation, and fabrication. But so much of life relies on other people that you can't ever, I don't think, carve it all out. But I'm really curious whether, I read about this a couple years back. I'm curious where it is now.
Yeah, Google sort of tries to do that where they identify things as important. That's obviously not foolproof, but it would be interesting because I think most people, if you just sat down with them for an hour or so, just if you gave someone else access to your email and they would go through it. If I could see your email right now, I would say you get 20 of these emails a day. That could be a filter that kicks back an auto-response.
You want to know how distracted I am? Last week I asked Carmen to do this, gave her my professional email login creds, and she is doing that because I was losing track of important stuff. So now it gets a little weird because you have to ask, what if someone emails me about a comment about Carmen? And they don't know that she's going to be reading it like, oh, hey, she ran over my foot in the parking lot, or she, her cat ate my dog, and I hate her forever now. Like, so this is something that occurred to me as a funniness, and
I think you'll be fine. My ex-girlfriend used to be my
oh, look at Tom Williams.
Yeah, sort of used to be my assistant in that regard, and she would do a lot of things on my email. I paid her, and I never really worried about that, but I guess it could have happened where someone could have said something.
But you and Laura are both so kind of emotionally stable people that I could probably spit in your eye and you'd laugh first. And yeah.
That's the definition of emotionally stable. Yeah, I have no want for violence. Okay, so I think we'll wrap it up there.
Cool.
But I promise, well, we can't promise because we haven't got commitments from either one of these guys, but next week we'll have or possibly 2 guests.
Well,
But
Zach
again,
said yes.
Again, we have the problem of when Blake was on here, I thought, well, we've invited our entire audience onto the podcast. So now if we have Blake and
then
Zach.
we see Tom Williams answering about the fact that Gmail has an auto-suggest reply option based on a deep learning neural net. I love that. Well, it looks like folks might need the room too.
Hey, I got it till 3:15, maybe 3:20. I can't remember.
So that's 2 or 7 minutes.
Yeah, right. So anyway, we've got some time. So okay, all right, we'll sign off. We'll see you guys next Friday at 2 p.m.
Thanks, everyone.